This week on Geeking Out, we've got Batman, Streets of Gotham, number 14, Smurfs, the preview comic, Lady Deadpool, one-shot, Pat Lee's Widow Warriors, number 1, Amazing Spider-Man, number 638, True Blood, number 1, and The Last Zombie, number 1. Hey there, fans in Comic Land, it's Leila here from the Comic Connection for another great episode of Geeking Out. First up, we've got Amazing Spider-Man number 638. This is by Joe Quesada and Paulo Rivera, Danny Mickey, and Richard Isanov, with Jim Shooter, David Michelinie, and Paul Ryan. Whew, that's a lot of people. Okay, in One Moment in Time, Part 1, we find out what MJ whispered to Mephisto on that fateful day when MJ and Peter gave up their marriage to save Aunt May during the events of One More Day. Anyways, flash forward to Peter and MJ talking about any regrets they might have about the day they didn't get married. So, the original story, or an original story, is interwoven into pages from Amazing Spider-Man Annual number 21, which was like the first marriage issue, and so they're trying to provide a more complete picture here of some of the events that happened missing in between the pages, which is kind of a cool concept. I will give them that. So, I'm one of the people who hated One More Day. I thought that it would have been a more brave and interesting decision to kill off Aunt May and let Peter live with the consequences of having a public identity, but no, we don't want to do that. But I will say that I've kind of come around to the new way of things, the new status quo. I mean, some of the stories have been more interesting, and just when I was starting to get used to the new universe, here comes back Joe Q to maybe screw it up again. Who knows? This issue was interesting. I'm interested to see what the effects of MJ's demand of Mephisto has on the whole storyline. Mostly, I'm just hoping that this is going to leave Spidey in an interesting place still. But while I wasn't a fan of the new, like some of the art in the new sections, because so many different styles was kind of disturbing, overall, I'm kind of a fan of this book. Hopefully Spidey's going to an interesting place, but we'll have to see. Okay, next up we've got Lady Deadpool one-shot by Mary H.K. Choi and Ken Lashley. So in this one we take a look inside the crazy mind of Wanda Wilson as she becomes obsessed with the beautiful Charles Randolph Faye and lets nothing get in her way. And I mean nothing. Not a revolution, an attempted recruitment by military forces, and not Captain America's best attempts to put her down. So this one was pretty well done. I mean, if you like Deadpool, you're probably going to like this. It has the same kind of wit and sarcasm. I mostly found myself shaking my head a lot, which I usually do in Deadpool books, as far as the story was concerned. Also, the art is not generally up to, you know, Ken's awesomeness. I'll say that. It was okay, but it doesn't have its usual detail that I was so looking forward to. But, you know, it worked for the story. So overall, if you're a Deadpool fan, you're probably going to like this one. Next up, we've got Batman, Streets of Gotham, number 14, by Paul Dini and Dustin Nguyen. So in this one, which is subtitled The House of Hush Part 1, Hush is posing as Bruce Wayne and trying to set a plan in motion to get a dangerous criminal released. And his right-hand man has no idea that all along he longs to kill all of his guardians, including her. He's a little crazy. Meanwhile, Mr. Pierce is released from prison after 37 years inside. Who is he, and what does he want to do? Well, other than having a shower and something to eat, he really wants to kill Bruce Wayne. So this is probably going to cause a problem for Hush. This is a very interesting story. I'm not a big fan of the art. It's not the kind of stuff that I normally like, but it fits sort of the dark tone of a detective story. But I love the cover, which is also by Nguyen. Really cool. Which is why I grabbed it off the shelf and went, let me try this one. And Hush is such an interesting character anyway. This promises to be a pretty good one. If you haven't read Batman Streets of Gotham, actually this was a pretty good read. I wouldn't mind picking up another one. And last but not least, we've got True Blood number 1 by Alan Ball, Marian Hagner, David Tishman, and David Messina. So in this one, a new threat arrives in Bon Tom, and it seems to have a big beef with Bill, which puts Sookie, Eric, and the rest of the gang at Merlotte's in the crossfires. So for you True Blood fans out there, if you didn't know this was coming, it's here, and it's pretty good. The art's pretty good. It looks like the characters that you see on the show, which, you know, they didn't make that mistake that they did with Angel. This is pretty good as far as looking like the actors. But it's also a brand new story. It's set in the world that Charlaine Harris created and that Alan Ball adapted for TV, but it's a completely different story. So if you're looking for some more True Blood after the episodes of the show, check this one out. See you next week.
Hey folks, Jim here, once again from Hamilton with this week's comic reviews. First up, we have the Smurfs 99-cent preview, written and drawn by Peo. And in this one, Gargamel discovers a way to transmute gold, but he must capture a Smurf first. And when he does it, it's up to Papa Smurf to try and save the day. Well, this is Smurfing Smurf. I don't know what to Smurf about this, but it's really Smurf. I really like this Smurf book, and it's very Smurf-tacular. And it's Smurf to the Smurf degree. And I really like Smurfs. Smurf. Next up, The Last Zombie #1, written by Brian Keane with art by Joe White. And in this one, in the aftermath of the zombie apocalypse, one man may have the cure, but he and the men tasked to protect him have to travel across the country first. Now, I like Brian Keane's writing, but I don't like his characterization a lot. Where this changes in this book is that it has Joe White involved, and the characters are simply fantastic looking. Art is simply fantastic. This is some of Joe's best work since his Shotgun Mary work way back in the 90s. By the way, when is Shotgun Mary #3 coming out? Pretty good story, pretty good art. If you're a zombie fan, you might want to try this out. It's a little bit different, and it'll be for almost everyone. And last but not least, Widow Warriors #1, written by Lloyd Chow and Long To, with art by Pat Lee and Craig Young. And in this one, the last remaining Yang warriors are defeated, and so the Yang widows take arms and set off to the western border on a path of revenge for those they lost. Yeah, who let Pat Lee back into comics after what he did to everyone at Dreamwave? Yeah, I can't recommend this book, but the art is muddy. Story-wise, it's okay, but the art is terribly muddy. And I have not seen anything. I mean, Pat's a great artist when he works hard, but this is just muddy as hell. And I can't really recommend it to anyone. And besides, I don't want Pat Lee working in comics any more than anyone else. We'll see you next week.